Let's play red light, green light. Only not the one you played as a kid. This one's very much for adults. Here we go. If you haven't tried Curio Wellness cannabis products, that's definitely a red light. But it's also a green light, because Greenlight Dispensary Southeast is the new home of Curio. For the best flower and edibles in Missouri, ask for Curio by name at Greenlight. You've got the green light. Go.
For use only by qualifying patients or consumers at least 21 years old. Individual results may vary.
Welcome to Greenway Audio Magazine. I am Tim, and not with me today is Brandon. I'm here by myself with Jake Litke, the CEO of MediaJel. Jake, thanks for joining us.
Tim, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
I like, as you know, we do our own like webinars. And so usually I'm in your seat. So I'm excited to be in the other seat. I have found that being a guest is easier than being the host.
Yeah. I would imagine. And doing it solo is even weirder today. I usually have my beautiful ginger friend next to me, but thank you for joining us. I know a lot about MediaJel. I've known of MediaJel, people that work there for a long time. You do fantastic work. You know, myself at Curio Wellness, we do some stuff with you as well. For people that don't know, like here in Missouri, we can get into the specifics and everything, but at a high level, what does MediaJel do specifically in cannabis?
Sure. So we started MediaJel in 2018 specifically to serve the cannabis industry. My background is in building software platforms in the advertising, mobile, data, geo space. Been doing that for a couple decades. I got introduced to some of the earlier investors. This is, again, talking about 2018. It was a slightly different world. And they were looking for solutions because they couldn't figure out how to do marketing. And so we started MediaJel with that in mind. And there was kind of like two main thesis problems that we had to solve. One was that cannabis companies were largely constrained to like weed maps and billboards. That was really the only thing that you could do, or Leafly, right? And so we needed to figure out how to get cannabis brands on mainstream advertising inventory. And then we also needed to rebuild all the tools that you need to have in order to do effective digital marketing. So things like attribution, onboarding first-party data, retargeting, all those things that people take for granted in the normal world that were just unavailable, right? Because most of the ad tech platforms are publicly traded companies and nobody wanted to touch cannabis. And so we had to solve those two problems, which we have solved at this point. And we did that in a couple of ways. Both of those things took a while. We are a technology business. Our largest part of our company is actually our software team. Most people see us from the outside as a cannabis agency or a regulated markets agency because we do work in other things like we work with casinos and alcohol brands. The vast majority of our business is still cannabis. But in order for all those things to work, we had to build our own technology stack. So I'll pause there and we can go.
So you have a developer team, and do you do UX and stuff like that and data analytics? Like what?
Yeah. Okay. So we do all of that. You could break the company in kind of two pieces, really. We have our product and engineering team, which is about half our company. And then we have our, what you'd call the agency team. And the agency team is doing things like, strategy on campaigns themselves. We do a lot of digital programmatic advertising. So that means serving things like banner and video ads on phones, tablets, desktops, all the way up to connected television in the living room. We'll get into the details there. There's a deep well of things that happen there. And then we do have like a services portion where we do help companies with their SEO and content strategy, because that's really there's a really great ROI on that for all companies, but especially for cannabis companies. Budgets are obviously constrained across the industry. Taxes are a bear. So it's difficult for people to be able to allocate funding to marketing, especially if they can't write it off. So we, a lot of what we do is try to figure out how to be very efficient with the marketing budgets of our partners and making sure that they're getting a good ROI.
Nail on the head. I've been saying this for years is marketing in cannabis is extremely difficult. When you have, here when Missouri, it first went medical and then they went rec a few years later, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I love marketing and advertising. This is a brand new industry. I'm going to get in here and get super creative and I'm going to help these companies. And then you realize a majority of their money is like getting applications done, real estate, financial, security, all this kind of stuff. And then it gets down to, hey, what about marketing? And then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we have like $5 left. But my nephew can make a website. And so we're, like, I'm sure
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
been part of those conversations of like, well, I could probably make a WordPress site for $5, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I was always up against the lack of money
Mhm.
in the marketing budget, and that they couldn't write it off. And so it was like a double gamble to work with marketing companies because there's it's tough. So I faced that for years, and it was very difficult to constantly explain how important marketing is. Every other industry gets it, but it's harder to get cannabis companies to go, all right, yep, I'll put some money in this, you know? And it just seemed like an afterthought to the bigger picture of getting the business off the ground and getting employees and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, oh, we need a website, we need a marketing plan, we need a logo, we need some branding, and then, hey, we open in 2 weeks, like there are the situations like that. So that's very tough. And I think a company like yours is extremely helpful because at a base level, these companies are like, okay, we got to get our social media handles. We'll do some Instagram posts. We'll figure out how to do some text blasts. We'll come up with a loyalty program. I guess that's about it, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
then that's when you guys step in, right?
Yeah. So, there's on the challenges side, there are obviously the tax implications make a huge issue. And I think when you're dealing with a lot of, especially smaller regional cannabis dispensaries, you know, many people are like, and it makes sense. They're more concerned about like, am I making payroll next month? Can I pay these fees and licenses versus what is my brand equity next year, right? Which is something a normal CPG company would be looking at, like, oh, we're going to
Yes.
put these dollars in, it'll have this downstream effect,
Hmm.
it'll fill up the top of the funnel, and then we can activate it later. And so, that stuff is pretty sparse in the cannabis industry. And then you run into if you don't have an experienced marketing team, most people's experience with marketing is really, as you mentioned, something on Meta, Instagram or Facebook. They're used to seeing direct response campaigns where it's like, here's a cool widget, buy it now, people buy it now, right? The the dispensary buyer's journey is very different. First of all, most people are not going to see an ad for cannabis and like place an order. Um, all across the country, we see this in every state. Friday is the most popular day for dispensaries. It just always is. Um, but you need to serve ads all the time, right? So you're going to be serving ads to people on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They're not going to buy something on that day. They're going to go enter place order on Friday or Thursday or whatever it is. So there's a gap there. And that creates a little bit of dissonance with people that aren't experienced with like the normal marketing flow because they expect someone to see an ad, click on an ad, make a purchase. And when that's not happening, it's very difficult and maybe the marketing person or whoever's in charge of marketing understands that, but then they're rolling that decision from a budget perspective up to their CFO or CEO who people in the cannabis industry have come from all kinds of different industries,
Hmm.
right? You have legacy
Yeah.
people, you got bankers, you got people who used to run restaurants. And so they're managing these very difficult P&Ls and their marketing person is saying, hey, I want to spend this money. And they're like, oh, you want to spend $10,000 last month. Well, what happened this week, right? So there's a little bit of that, and that was kind of the foundation of our technology decisions we made in 2019. I would say 29, right in there is we went ahead and just built our own multi-touch attribution platform. So we have like a device graph and identity graph, and that allows us to connect the top of the funnel, which is normally display advertising, right? Ad on TV, ad on your phone, with bottom of the funnel activity purchases with, up to a 30-day window. Being able to do that really helped a lot because now we can visualize what's happening. Okay, it takes 10 or 15 impressions over a 2-week period for an individual person to see those ads before they make a purchase. Um, And so and we've built a lot of things on that, and we've built a lot of things on that being a transparent solution. So we tell people, here's the exact publisher the ad was served on, which creative it was, when it was served. And then we let our advertising partners kind of decide how they want to interpret that, because everyone has their own marketing mix. And we're pretty clear that, like, we say, just because someone got served a handful of ads on their phone or their TV and made a purchase 2 weeks later, we're not claiming sole credit for that. They probably saw a billboard, maybe their friend told them about it, maybe you texted them an offer, maybe you sent them an email. The data landscape is still pretty fragmented in the cannabis space, so sometimes tying those things together is not as good as you would expect it to be if you're using some so more mature platforms in the non-cannabis space. But it's gotten better and better. I would say today we're lucky enough to have some partners and advertisers in the cannabis space that are doing well and expanding, right? And as you're aware, right now we're in this kind of consolidation phase. I live in California, so we're kind of like the canary in the coal mine in many ways. You can see, and it's been interesting watching states come online, right? Because we've seen the cycle. It plays out a little bit different in each state.
We have an idea,
depending on if it's a limited license or not limited license, but it's the same basic story. It's kind of like the sequel, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So
That's
now you're in Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Now you're in like the best state in the country.
It's
I
great
don't know if
here. It's awesome.
I've not spent much time in Missouri, but I meant from a cannabis retailer perspective. Missouri has the lowest discount rates of any state in the country.
Wow. Okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's 15% on average in Missouri.
Okay.
In Washington, it's like 40. California is like 27, I think. I forget. We did an episode on this. We talked to Headset, and they gave us like all the states. It's a big range. But Missouri has the best market in terms of like being an operator. Yeah.
Yeah. It's similar challenges here with consolidation. Big dogs coming in and buying out the mom and pops and all that kind of stuff. So, similar challenges here. But I did have a question for you, because I've noticed I come from, a marketing background as well. So I'm all about measuring data. I love analytics. I love going in there and seeing if campaigns worked and if people are clicking and how they're engaged and all that kind of stuff. However, I do see a huge value in the digital out-of-home ads, like billboards. So here in Missouri, billboards are a big thing for cannabis, and we have a lot of the digital billboards. So where you can kind of like, it's very interesting. You'll drive down the highway at like noon, and it's Sam's, Costco, your typical whatevers. And then rush hour, it's dispensary. People driving home are like, oh wait, you know what? That'd be nice to kind of relax tonight. So I love how that works now with the digital advertising on the billboards. How do you measure that? How do you, you touched on it briefly, but like when you're telling your clients, like, this is very important to run these types of ads, how do you kind of like justify to them that it is working?
Yeah. Digital out of home is it's kind of its own category in terms of all the digital things, because it behaves differently, right? If we're serving ads on a device in a household or on someone's phone where they're moving around, we have signal on that, right?
Right.
The ad impression gets served. It pings our servers. We know that there was an ad impression served. You can't really do that with digital out of home, right? There are some tools that people have, and we have access to these as well. In fact, that's something I built in the past, where you can measure in an area device IDs that have been seen in an area. And so you can, to a certain degree, say, so like when you checking the weather on your phone and like WeatherBug, for example, if you have agreed to share your data, what happens is your device ID and your latitude and longitude goes into this big anonymous data pool. It gets aggregated, and then companies like us can purchase that data for measurement purposes or retargeting, right? So one of the things that we will do is we can drop polygons around anywhere in the US and collect device IDs that have been seen in that area in a given time period. Now, it's probably like 5% of the population has their phones configured in that way. So it's not everyone. It is a sample size that is statistically relevant, though, if you wanted to use it and say that, okay, well, we know that this device was in this area and it has visibility into this billboard. And there are some companies that do that. We don't really do that just because the data, while mathematically sound, is so hard to explain and create such long conversations that we just don't even bother.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to be aware that, look, digital out of home is a branding play. But it has something else going for it, though, which is that you can see it. Right.
Yes.
And there is a little bit of a vanity play there, like when you get to see your own brand on the billboard.
Yeah, heck yeah.
So that actually works well for whoever's making the purchasing decisions because they can see the billboard. We get questions sometimes where people are like, okay, well, we're running these digital ads. How do I see them? And like, well, you can't see them. They're targeted to specific people and on specific applications or publications. There are some things that we can do. So if we really wanted to, like, to figure out the person, like, okay, let's figure out where your device is. Let's put your device in the targeting list, and then you'll be in rotation. And then you see the ad. But yeah, so digital out of home I think it's a great channel. We do it. It's usually, people are usually doing it when they have a larger budget because it is one of those things that's very difficult to measure. Whereas serving someone an ad, where they're playing a game or on their TV or whatever, and then knowing that same device or household made a purchase 10 days later, which we can measure by integrating with, Dutchie, Jane, whatever, we have our tags integrated with the system. So we get signal on the impression, we get signal on the purchase, and we can tie those together and say, these were the same people. We don't know who they are. It's anonymized. Like, we don't know anyone's names.
Sure.
Or even, necessarily their customer IDs. We just know that this device saw ads and this device also made a purchase.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So, on a bigger scale, traditional marketing, people are, hey, let's do organic. Let's try to do as much organic as possible. Let's, create, original content, and let's do this, and let's try not to spend money. But you gotta, so
you have to.
You have to.
Yeah.
The organic stuff is great, and it's, I feel like at this point in the game, it's almost supplemental to paid advertising, running campaigns, all that kind of stuff. Do you agree? Do you see organic declining? Do you see it steady? How do you kind of interpret that?
So for the advertisers we work with where we've done organic, we have a very high retention rate and we have long-term relationships. The issue with organic, which is, creating SEO content, original content, making sure that, people can find you, is that, again, it is not an overnight thing, right? So you're like, okay, we're going to do this work, but in 6 months, you're going to see the real, impacts of this. Job turnover is pretty high in the cannabis industry. Some people don't last 6 months at a company in the marketing positions because the marketing position is under a lot of pressure to produce results. And marketing is, even when you're running display advertising, it still takes time, right? If no one has seen your brand before, they need to see this is like just kind of marketing 101, like if someone hasn't seen your brand, they need to see it 10, 20 times before it even resonates as something that's not like a garage sale, right? So the issue, the reason why a lot of people go, and we have this conversation all the time, like, okay, here's the menu of things. You can do paid search, you can do SEO and organic content, and you can do display media. And usually people want to pull for the lever that's going to do something the quickest. We try to encourage people to say, like, look, you should invest in your organic because it operates like an annuity. No matter how efficient your paid media is, let's say you're getting like a really great 5x ROAS on your ad spend, right? That's fantastic. And you can keep investing in that. You're still paying for it, right? There's still a cost to every single sale when you're running paid media. When you have organic content, you invest in that content and then it continues to drive revenue and awareness for you in a non-iterative way, right? So whatever your budget was, say you spent $10,000 on making great content, that's going to keep making money for you, like almost indefinitely, at least for practical purposes. And so it will more than pay for itself over time, and it will continue to pay for itself. However, it is a time-based investment, which again, most people are short on time and budget.
Absolutely. One of my first realizations that the cannabis industry was extremely different than other industries is in my past life, I worked at a branding agency, and I was like, I started to look to get cannabis clients. And so we met with a cannabis client. And we did the traditional agency thing. Let's sit down, have a brainstorm. Let's, have some ideas on a board, and let's think
Yeah.
through the brand story and how
Get some
could
archetypes built.
yeah, let's talk this out for a couple weeks, like that kind of stuff. And it was immediately, no, how can I sell stuff today?
Yesterday.
And we're like, oh, this is a different approach because we're used to the long game, and
Yeah.
it's kind of short right in cannabis. You need immediate results because could run out of money, run out of time, run out of this, and there's the constant expenses, and there's a bunch of different outside factors that other industries don't see, and regulations. So that's the first time I went, okay, this is a different game. We need to reevaluate
Yeah.
how we work with cannabis companies when it comes to marketing.
Hey guys, do I have news for you? Quick heads up, Kind Goods just opened their 6th location in Maryland Heights, right off 270 on Dorset, and the place is a vibe. They're Missouri's OG deli-style dispensary, so you can actually walk in, see the flower, look at it, maybe get a sniff, talk to the people who really know their stuff, and shop without any pressure. Take your time, figure out what you want. The store's super welcoming, the staff's amazing, the selection is huge, and it just makes the whole experience easy. I love it easy. So if you're in the area, you're heading toward a show, swing by the new Kind Goods on Dorset. Let them know that we sent you. Tell them Greenway Audio Magazine. Good vibes, great products. You'll get it as soon as you walk in.
Yeah, and there's definitely some unique factors about the cannabis industry that play into this. So, one of the things that is very effective for dispensaries is their text and loyalty programs, right? And it gives them a slightly false sense of how they should be investing, because it is true, if you have a bunch of phone numbers of high intent active cannabis consumers and you blast them out an offer for 35% off, people are going to come in the door and buy stuff, right? So they do have that instant feedback button that they can push, and many people push it too often, and then they run into different problems. But you're actually not even in the marketing funnel at that point. You're in the retention game, right? Retention and expanding revenue from your existing customer base. And so if you can send out, some thousands of text messages and drive an equal, some other thousands of dollars of revenue, it can be misleading for an operator because they're like, oh, I'll just keep doing this. But they're operating inside of a little swimming pool, which is their existing customer base. And it gets scary when you get outside of your pool because it's uncertain. And also the other thing, anyone can start a marketing agency. There's yes, you can get a degree in marketing, but there's no one that will stop you from putting up a website and saying you're an expert marketer. And so many people get burned, right? There's a lot of questionable marketing groups out there. And then on top of that, if you are doing paid media, I've said this ad nauseum, the paid media environment is designed really to take as much of your money as possible and give you as little value back, unless you can tame that beast, right? It's just like a gaping hole of money, like Google, Meta, the programmatic ad exchange specifically. You can just pour all your money into it and it will just happily burn it all up, right? So if you take that fact and then mix it with subpar, or in some cases maybe morally questionable groups of people that are just trying to get dollars out of operators, those two combinations have burned a lot of cannabis companies. We come into a lot of conversations with people that are very skeptical, and I don't even fault them for that. You should be skeptical when you're talking to a marketer.
Absolutely. I've run across that a few times, especially in the early days of like SEO, where it was, hey, we'll get you some backlinks to these sites, we
That's some
got
backlinks
you
right here in my pocket.
right.
Yeah.
These backlinks. And then you're like, let me see a list of these relevant sites that we have backlinks to. And they're like, not even, it's vacations in Tahiti, all this kind of stuff. And you're like, that's doing nothing. And then, so Google's continually changing the algorithm to where you're at their mercy most times. I mean, I know even running ads, that you feel like are working and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden they stop working. You're like, well, what happened here? Well, the algorithm changed and we have to adjust this. So is that part of what you guys do too? Kind of like keep on their algorithm, keep on, how they're changing?
Let's break that into two pieces. One is the organic side.
Mm-hmm.
And Google changes the algorithm like 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 times a year. You have to keep up with that. Now, ostensibly, Google is trying to make an effort to provide their users with information they're looking for. And because effective SEO has a straight line to revenue for marketers, they're fighting a war against, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people trying to manipulate their system so that they can sell whatever widgets they have, right? So they're constantly changing things around. And you can see really big swings in organic traffic when those happen. The cannabis as a category is actually a little bit insulated from the larger swings because it's already sort of in a weird purgatory in Google to begin with. So it does the changes happen, but they don't flow down as dramatically because it's already kind of this problem child for them.
Right. Yes. Well said. Yeah, that is interesting.
So that's organic, right?
Yeah.
And actually, before I move on to that, I'll touch real quick on the AI systems, right? So ChatGPT, Claude, etc. We are seeing more and more of that traffic coming in, meaning people are searching for dispensary near me or whatever it is, and ChatGPT or Claude comes back with an answer. And that's a fundamentally different game because you're not going to get more than 2 citations usually in an AI response. So the Google SERP response only has like 1 or 2 organic things anyway at this point. It's all paid. But that aside, the AI system will try to answer your question and they will reference a couple of citations. So now instead of looking at, am I on the top 10 of Google, you're looking at, am I getting referenced at all in one of the 2 spots? We're seeing that grow month over month in terms of the percentage of traffic coming to dispensaries' websites. It's still not quite double digits. It's somewhere in the like 3 to 7-ish% of traffic. Varies a little bit, obviously by whether or not you're getting ranked. So it could be 0, but so yeah, those change a lot. And the strategy for AI is a little different. AI is looking at it has enough brain power to read all of your content. It's not just about keywords, and Google does go beyond keywords at this point, but it's not really about what are you mentioning on your site. It's how good is the content, how informative is it, and because it is going to try, because its job, the AI's job, is try to find the best content so that it can provide the best answers. So if you provided the AI the best content for it to be able to give good answers, it's going to reference you as the place that you got it. So that's kind of like the quick tip on how to get on ChatGPT results.
Interesting. Yeah, because it was the phrase was content is king for so long, and I assume it's close to, it's still there.
It still is. The surface is changing a lot. Like I use AI systems mostly at this point rather than search for when I want information. So, the content is king still on that front.
Right.
And, but the type of content is different. I don't know if you remember, it's not as bad now, but everyone kind of made this joke of like, I want like a recipe for chili or whatever it is. And you you click on the first link and you go to someone talking about their grandma for like 20
The
pages
history
because
of
that's
chili.
how they figured out how to like game the system then, right? They're like, oh, Google wants us to do all this other stuff. So you're like, can I just get the recipe?
Right. Right. Yeah. That's
So it
interesting.
changes quickly. And then
Yeah.
you were saying in terms of the paid search, right? Which you can do. You can do paid search on Google. You have to do it in very specific ways. And they're lightening that up this year. It'll get a little easier. It's not that you can't do it now. It's just it's tricky. And then what happens there is it varies quite a bit by the market in terms of what kind of return you're going to get on Google Ads. And you have to know what words you can buy and what words you can't buy. But it does work really well for many dispensaries. There's market pressures, though, in some places, right? So if you've got more people bidding on those words, the cost per click is going to go up, and then your ROAS becomes more complicated. There's also regional things like, you can do Bing also, right? So you have Bing, which I know people tend to forget about, but it does exist. And it works well in Florida, for example, where you have an older
Really?
community and you have
Oh.
people that buy a PC and they take
And
it
it's
home and
installed.
they open it up and that's what's there and that's what they use. Right?
Interesting.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of variables you have to take into
Sure.
account.
Huh. That's interesting. Okay. So here, okay, so we've talked about the marketing and advertising and all this kind of stuff. But the big thing here is measuring it, reading it, reading the
Yeah.
data, and then making decisions based on the data. And I feel like sometimes companies miss that part. They do the stuff, and then they'll occasionally look into the analytics. Oh yeah, it looks like it's working, that kind of stuff. But that should be leading your decisions with this stuff, And so,
It should.
do you have situations like that where you're working with clients where you're like, okay, you did all the stuff, and they're like, okay, cool, thanks, and you're like, well, yeah, but there's stuff that we need to do after we start running these campaigns so we can measure it, see how it's working, do some A/B tests, that kind of stuff. Do you
Yeah.
have that situation with people where they
We could put our advertisers into a couple buckets, right? We have some number of people that are kind of set it and forget it. Like, here's a marketing budget. We give them reports. But even though they forgot it, we didn't, right? So our ad ops team has directive. Like, we're not gonna like any campaign on the programmatic side that's not at least like a 3x ROAS in terms of like ad dollars spent to like purchases and influenced that's like a red light, right? And so we need to make sure that is getting better. One of the things we run into with some of those advertisers is getting creative refreshes out of them, right? Which is like, look, you've been running the same ad for 3 months. We need to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want us to do it for you? Because it's making our job harder, right? Because you can't just run the same ad all year. I would say a lot of our larger clients are pretty engaged at this point, and they're looking at numbers pretty closely. We last year went a little bit deeper in the stack, and we tied directly into the POS systems now. And so, in addition to what we had always been showing, which is here's ad impressions to devices or people, and here's purchases they made, we now tie that into the actual purchase history of the customer. And we're able to verify things like, okay, this was not a canceled order. Where did the order occur? How many times has that person purchased? And so what we've been doing is giving, at this point, our platform is actually a business intelligence platform that extends beyond the work that we do, because we have access to all kinds of data tools, right? Like, we have an identity graph. We know like lots of things about everyone and where they live and what they do. Some of it's a little creepy, but all of it's legal.
Right.
And it is anonymized. We don't keep any PII, right? So we don't keep anyone's names, but we can tell you interesting things about, like, I'll give you a sort of a low resolution thing that can have a big impact is just choosing the right zip codes in your market to advertise to. Zip codes, there's variability, but it's consistent enough that zip codes tend to be demographically grouped, right? And we'll take this from a branding lens, right? The big levers when you're running a display campaign are what is your brand identity, right? Your archetype. Which publications are you running the ads on? And what area are you running those ads in? And so I give an example. I like to use this example because we ran these campaigns. This is years ago, but we ran campaigns for Pop and Barkley, right? Very wellness oriented brand, and Heavy Hitters, very like street lifestyle brand, right? Those campaigns perform very differently by zip code and by which app they're in, right? Because even just from a
Sure.
base like psychological perspective, people
Yeah.
are going to be drawn to things that they align with, right? And so by choosing things like figuring out that, well, if we analyze all of your sales and we understand that this brand is really being driven by sales from people that live in these zip codes, then let's run campaigns in those zip codes for this brand where you have good brand alignment. And then let's run campaigns for the other brands in zip codes where you're going to have a better alignment as well. And that simple change will usually result in like a 30% improvement versus just doing both things in both areas, without that strategy.
Got it. Okay. And so in the cannabis space, your clients are typically dispensaries, MSOs, brands. You work with
It's
delivery.
Yeah, delivery. So
Mhm.
the majority of the marketing budget for advertising, I would
Mhm.
say, is being spent by the retailers, whether that's delivery or
Mhm.
brick and mortar. And the
Okay.
reason for that is that they get the whole basket. Whatever someone comes in and buys, that counts in their revenue. When we run campaigns with brands, it's going to be a co-marketing campaign because brands can't sell direct to consumers. Let's just take hemp out of the conversation for a second.
Yes.
Okay. So, with a brand, and we run these campaigns and they are effective, but that means that you need two parties involved, right? You need to have a brand and you need to have one or more retailers that are going to work together. Usually it's one brand and one retailer for a given campaign. And when it's brand driven, we will work with the brand. They will choose a set of retail locations or retailers. Like, let's say they're going to choose like 10 retail locations in California. Maybe it's one retailer, maybe it's two or more. And then we're going to run a branded campaign a radius around one of the retail locations. And the click through is going to go to that retailer and ideally to that brand's page for that product, right? And that works well. And there's some knock-on benefits there because at that point, the brand and the retailer can have a different conversation about what the brand is bringing to the table. Like, say, instead of slotting fees for shelf space, they could say, look, I'm investing in marketing and we're going to drive people to your location. So give me better shelf space or whatever it is, that however that conversation goes. Now the reality is that consumers usually buy stuff from multiple brands when they go to a dispensary, right? They're going to, oh, I want these pre-rolls. I also want some gummies. They have opinions. And so one thing that the brand needs to just accept is that some of their marketing dollars, when they run a co-marketing campaign, are going to result in some number of customers buying products that are not theirs. So that's another bit of friction. But if you take it out of the cannabis space and go to the normal world where like all the marketing for grocery stores is done by the brands,
I was gonna say grocery stores right there.
all of it,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And people buy like 50 products or
Right.
20 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
Kellogg is running an ad, they're going to go buy that thing. It's just that there's so many complicated aspects about sophisticated marketing that most cannabis marketers don't understand. When they encounter them, they're like, this is crazy. Why would I don't want to do that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. So, Jake, we've nerded out big time on marketing, which I love doing. Let's get into Jake Litke. How did you get into cannabis? What was your path into the cannabis space?
Yeah, so I got tricked into the cannabis space. I like to joke. And then when I meet people like yourself, I'm like, how did you get tricked into the cannabis space?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier. At the time, I had been spending a couple of years building a geospatial retargeting platform, which I mentioned earlier, that the part where we can draw polygons and retarget. And so like we have every dispensary in the country geoframed. So we have millions of phones that have been seen in dispensaries. And when we buy ads, we can filter by that. So we only want to serve ads to devices that have been seen in dispensaries. at the time when I built it, I used a different analogy because I wasn't working in cannabis, and I used a dog park, which was like, draw a box on the dog park, retarget phones that were in the dog park. You don't need to know anything else about them. You don't need to know who they are, where they've been, other than that they were in a dog park. You've got like a 90% chance that they have a dog. Let's serve them ads for dog food. I was literally sitting at a restaurant working on my laptop with maps and stuff on my screen. And the person next to me said, "What are you doing on your screen?" That's how it started.
Okay.
And I explained what I was doing, and they said, "We need things like that in the cannabis space.
Get out of here." Okay.
And that was, like I said, that was an investor that invested in a bunch of cannabis companies. We had a conversation that went over some period of time that ultimately resulted in saying, let's build a marketing platform for the cannabis space.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I was,
That's awesome.
I didn't realize the buzzsaw that I was going to run myself into.
You don't until you live it. Yeah, I get it. That's interesting. So did you ever have like an interest in cannabis where, I mean, did you even fathom that this would be an industry that you'd end up in?
No, I did not fathom that. I mean, I have a personal interest in cannabis from my younger, now, always, let's just say always.
Always. Yeah.
But I got my my medical card in California before rec.
Yeah.
And this is a fun story. So I went to Oakland to a place called 420 Evaluations.
Okay.
It was on Shattuck or Telegraph, I think. And you go, it's not a great neighborhood. So you go up the stairs and there's like a little waiting room. There's like 4 people in it. And then they put your name in. They said, okay, go see the doctor. And I go into this like essentially bare room. That's maybe like 20 by 20 feet with a folding table in the middle of it, and like an elderly Indian man behind it, right?
Okay.
And I have a conversation with him about my ailments, and he gives me my medical card, and his name is, I gotta find my card. His name was Dr. Toke, T-O-K-E.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So like from a little, lifestyle recreational perspective, I was a fan of cannabis. I certainly did not, I got pulled into it, we'll say.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'll say a couple things about it. It's been 8 years now, I think, almost to the month. I think it was right about February, 8 years ago. It's been a frustrating but tremendously enjoyable industry to work in. The people are pretty amazing, almost all of them. There's always some weirdos in every industry.
Yeah.
But it's got the biggest kind of spread of types of people of any industry I've worked in. Like I've worked at carriers, I've worked at startups, data companies. I've worked in a lot of different industries, and I've seen some things come together in the early 2000s. I watched the entertainment industry and the wireless carrier industry smash into each other.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting experience. But, you go to a cannabis conference and you have like someone from every kind of industry floating around.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I love about it, is that people are bringing their specialties from the industry that they were in into cannabis. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you get that outside perspective of like, hey, I tried this at my last place and it worked. Let's try it here. So it's great. I mean, even the company I'm at, there are people from Walmart corporate. There's the Black Rifle Coffee. There are all of these different companies outside of cannabis coming in and sharing their knowledge of, we tried this and it worked. Let's try it here. And that's like the fun aspect that I enjoy of the industry, is hey, let's try it. I mean, especially in the early days before everything started to get regulated, let's just do it. See if it works. See if we get in trouble, see if it works. I don't know. And, it's getting a little more regulated now, especially here in Missouri, but the fact that it's still kind of an open landscape, and
it's a frontier.
I enjoy that.
It's a frontier game, right?
Yeah.
And I align with that pretty well. I'm from, I'm from California. I'm raised, in San Francisco. My dad also. That is sort of the ethos of the Bay Area, right? That's how, there's a lot of weirdos here because they came from everywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah. That's great. Well, Jake, this has been a great conversation, man. I'm excited to get this out and have the people here, especially in Missouri, learn more about MediaJel. So I appreciate you joining me. To get more information, they're just MediaJel.com, right? They just go to the
MediaJel with a
site
J.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. MJ.
Great name, by the way. It
thanks.
really fits. It does.
Yeah, well, actually, from a branding perspective, we'll take one more little second of your time here.
I love this.
A lot of people have built brands that I feel are like just overly on the nose when it comes to cannabis. Everything is green, leaf, Mary,
Yep.
this, right?
Yep.
And then some of them are even more ridiculous when it's like someone who clearly didn't have a lot of business or branding. They like came up with a name for their dispensary. They were certainly high when they did it.
Yes.
It was maybe clever and funny, but you're like, how are you going to scale that? Like this is not a multi-chain operation with that name that you chose. And so, you know, I wanted to have a name that encompassed what we were doing but that didn't say cannabis in it, right? Media is what we do.
Right.
Gel kind of brings things together.
Yep.
There is the happenstance of the MJ that's in there, which
didn't even think of that.
Works well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, I love that stuff. That's great. Jake, thanks for joining us, man. And we'll be in touch. I'd love to do a part 2 here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know.
Towards the end of the year. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate your time.
Perfect. Yeah. Have a great day.